Huvitav, miks ta siin näitab sul?
See peabki näitama, sul näitab seda, see on speaker ju. See on ainult see.
Jaa, aga miks ta full screen'is ei ole? Sest ta...
Ühesõnaga.
we can start when meeting. It's not too easy for me to speak in English. I try. Maybe you understand. As I have been said many times, a human can learn only from the other humans. We can't learn from bushes, from trees, from walls, from dogs and whatsoever. We all, what we know, what all we do, we learn from the other people. The more different the other people are, the better. The more we learn. The more interesting are these people, the more we learn. And according to this formula, here in the same room have been more than 80 guests. They all have been different. They have been politicians, artists, and so on. But they have been, let's say, common people because they have been outside the Hiiumaa, maybe even outside the Estonia, but never outside our planet. Today we have a guest who has been outside our planet. This meeting should be very interesting. I say welcome to you, astronaut Nikon Mapp. Floor is yours.
I'm going to take this conversation down to earth again. My presentation is mainly to make you accustomed to our island and your roots, your ancestors. This feels awkward. Anyway, like I wrote to you here, Hiiumaa is often overlooked in Estonia to be this rural area that no one really knows anything about. Because if you tell someone that you're from Hiiumaa, they're always going to say, oh, I have the sister of my boyfriend's something something is from Hiiumaa, right? But no one really knows the entirety of it. So I will try my best to show you what our island basically is. Throughout history, and still is today, it is very beautiful. It is sometimes called a paradise island. We have amazing beaches. We have a lot of rich history and also stuff that might interest you in military history. So this slide here is to show you the positioning of Hiiumaa, the logistical positioning of why it was so important in history for both forces of, for example, the World War II to want to have this. Because once you gain control over our main islands, so Hiiumaa and Saaremaa, you can basically have the entire Baltic Sea. But because of our location as well, we have had close trading routes with Stockholm, with Sweden, with Finland, and also close enough trading route with the rest of Estonia. This specifically is Hiiumaa. So as you can see, we are in Kärtla, and it used to be divided into 5 counties. Now we are a more united front. But all around there, we have a lot of things that you might enjoy and see. I'm not even sure what your tour entails later, but one of the bigger trademarks of Hiiumaa is the lighthouses. Because, well, the top one there, the Kupu one, is one of the oldest working lighthouses to this day. It has been operational since 1531, right? Originally made to divert ships away from our not so stable seabed. It has also been used to ransack and to gain riches locally. It is it is very historically iconic. So basically, a lot of people say that if you don't know about this, you haven't been to Hiiumaa. So Kuputuladorn, the top one, and next to that we have a few others. This is Tahkuna, this is Ristna, and Tahkuna was one of the when USSR soldiers, for example, left Hiiumaa. That was one of the last places that they left, and some of them just jumped off dramatically to leave. This is another thing. So you have a lot to do with space. The main way that you are presented to us right now is space. We essentially, Kärtla is on the edge of a meteorite crater. We have had one here millions of years ago. We got hit by a very big rock from space. And now, thanks to that, we have very, very rich water resources, for example. A lot of the stone layers in our ground are mixed because of it. Over here, there is a viewing platform that you can see how the layers are mixed. And we have fresh spring water from our taps, thanks to that. Hiiumaa as a county is one of the least densely populated, but also most covered by forest. So around 73% of our island is covered in forest. And that is slightly due to the deportation of humans thanks to the Second World War, because I'm not sure if you're familiar, but a lot of Estonians got deported by the Russians to Siberia. And their land was just left over and covered by forest. So thanks to that, we have a lot of forest, we have clean air, and once you get used to that and then go back somewhere else, you're gonna remember this. You're gonna remember the clean air. And a joke that people in Hiiumaa like to say, you can't get lost, because you can essentially walk in any direction and you'll still end up next to the sea. This specifically is tailored to you, because this is your the area that you are originally from. We went ahead and tried to recreate your family tree and also show you on the map. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but that is where the village where your ancestors are from is located in. It is 7 square kilometers, and I'm not sure what that is in miles, but I know that scientists still use kilometers in America, so I hope you'll understand. And it has a population of 25 people, so still somewhat going strong, you know? Out of the churches in Hiiumaa, I specifically wanted to first show you Käina, because logistically that would be the area that the church that they most likely attended. I'm not sure if you can argue me with, with that one. But that church currently is in ruins. So I tried to get you the pictures. This is currently of the ruins, but it is a very old church, St. Martin's Church. It used to have a very iconic and known instrument. And yeah, basically a lot of people around the area of Käina attended that. It used to be built again and again. It used to have a lot of construction because of the growing population, so people could actually fit in it. And yeah, but currently, sadly, it is in ruins because of things that happened in World War II. These are some of the other more known churches of Hiiumaa. This one specifically, I'd like to point out that they started building it in the 13th century, and it is still standing to this day. The local church that we have here is about, say, 800 meters. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's to that direction in our town park. So that is the Kärtla church. Then we have the Emmaste church, which is also 19th century built. And then Kuriste, I just got that out of there because it's a fairly tiny church, but it's my home church. So, and because not a lot of people know that we actually have Greek Orthodox churches here. Originally they were Russian, but now they're mostly Greek Orthodox. I brought in military history because I did my homework. I know a bit. So Because of Estonia's strategic location, we have a lot of things left over from the layers and layers of wars that have gone over Estonia. And some of them, like a lot of them actually, still remain like to be shown and to be visited to this day. I'm gonna just have a question to the broadcaster. Kas ma saan seda linki avada? Kas ma tohin seda linki avada? Proovime. So this is essentially a map of like a lot of the military buildings or dug-ins or things that you can view that are still intact and remain to this day. And this is like on Google Maps. Basically, this link will divert you to Google Maps. So once you find the pin, you will be able to find it. Yes. These are some of the pictures of the military-related things. This over here is in our military museum, because we have a local military museum in Tahkuna, where there are a lot of vehicles that used to be in use for the Estonian military, for example. Some old artillery, uniforms on display. And like these are, well, the dugouts, the watch points that we had that are currently being taken over by the forest. And then again, Tahkuna Lighthouse, because it was of strategic importance. Then finally, we get to our school. So this one is a bit of a timeline of how education in Kärdla has started in general, because it used to just be because of the factory. So the entire reason our town exists is a factory that the main owners just decided, why not? Industrial revolution, let's do it. So we got a factory. And then because the factory needed workers and the workers had kids, there you go, we needed a school. So in 1830, they made us a school, essentially. That's where we started getting education here. And then over time, we started getting a bunch of smaller schools, a bunch of specialized schools, but then in 1916, all of them got united. In 1940, because a lot of the leaders realized that because of our location, it is very difficult for people from Hiiumaa to get secondary education. So they started offering a full education. And what I mean by that is currently our full education is first grade to 12th grade, but in that time, basically, it meant the same thing. A high school education was available. And then, since then, we've had a lot of upgrades. We've had one extra house built there that is already demolished. Like you heard, first thing today is that we have a new school building. So that's what happened this year. Our school currently was built in 2016 because every county has to have a country-funded school. So we are essentially a country-funded public school. And like I said, we had that fancy building that also got demolished, and the place now is that middle school. And we've been a united high school for a while. We are fairly high on the list of exam results for a public school, because mostly those lists are topped by elite schools and things. But considering those, we are fairly high. We have operated around 7 years. I want to say we have around 125 students this year. Any teachers want to comment that? Not exactly sure, but around 130 every year. And then, like I said, we are the only secondary school in Hiiumaa, so if you want to get a local education, this is where you come. Do you have questions? I'm sorry, that was a lot of talking. Kas kellelgi teisel on küsimusi? Okay, next time. Questions are for next time. Gotcha. Thank you for listening. Do you want that video?
I'm going to play the video, sure, yeah. Is it downloaded or just on the internet?
I think it's on there. Do you want that first, or did you probably had a presentation?
No, I'll just talk a little bit first.
Okay, all right, so, wait, I will close my part of this. Give me a second. And then that's all yours. And if
That
you
was really well done. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for that history.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, hello. It is so wonderful to be here on Hiiumaa. As you know, my roots are from this family, this area, and I have my father, Howard, here as well joining me. And so it's our first visit to Estonia from the United States. It's absolutely beautiful here, and I appreciate you welcoming me so much. I'm excited to chat with you today. We could talk forever. There are so many things that I'm excited to share with you. But I think the most exciting part is perhaps to talk about what it's like to leave our planet Earth and live in space for 5.5 months. And so NASA has helped me put together a video, which is a summary of my mission in space. And I'll share that with you. And then afterwards, we'll have time for some questions. So hopefully this maybe spark some questions, or you already may have some questions in your mind. So I'm happy to talk with you about those. So let's go ahead and we'll start the video. Let's see if I get the sound. You guys, you have sound maybe? No?
And there they are. The astronauts of Crew 5 taking their first steps outside as they head to the pad. There they go. The rocket recline. There it is.
I like the way they did it kind of in coordination.
And here we go, the first two astronauts to board Crew Dragon. On the left, Josh Cassada, and on the right, Commander Nicole Mann. And here come our second two astronauts, mission specialists Koichi Wakata and Anna Kikkonen.
Special thanks on behalf of all the crew to our family and friends. It is your love and support that help make dreams come true. Now let's do this. Crew 5 displays are configured for launch.
3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And liftoff.
Stage 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. Copy 2 Alpha.
And there is separation.
Dragon separation confirmed.
On Crew 5, call this little guy our free fall indicator. We're here to tell you there's plenty of gravity up here. In fact, that's what's keeping us in orbit right now.
The moon in the farthest portion of your screen there, the furthest back circle, Dragon in the middle, and the International Space Station in the closest field of view. Portion of your screen there, the furthest back circle, Dragon in the middle, and the International Space Station in the closest field of view. Of course,
little bit? Okay. Okay, if it's just 1 minute, we can wait. I'll just talk a little bit about the launch. Okay, so we're going to download the video so we don't have to rely on the internet to play it through. But I'll talk for the first part about the launch. So I'm sure many of you know that our destination is the International Space Station. And the International Space Station is 250 miles above the planet and is traveling at 17,500 miles per hour. And so it makes one lap around the planet every 90 minutes. The amazing thing is on board, when you look out the window, that means you see a sunrise and a sunset every 45 minutes. It's incredible. Because we come around the Earth and the Earth is spinning underneath us, we travel our ground track, a parabolic path, across the ground. Unfortunately, we come as high as just south of the Baltic Sea. So when I was on board station, I was trying to take photos of Estonia. And you can see Estonia, but it's at a slant angle distance. It's hard to break out because we didn't come, directly over the top of Estonia. You saw the video so far. It took you through the launch. So on board Crew Dragon, I had myself. My pilot is Josh Cassada. We had a Japanese astronaut, Koichi Wakata, and we had a cosmonaut, Anya Kikana. And so as our international crew launched to the space station, already on board were 3 astronauts, Sergei Dima, an American astronaut called Frank Rubio. And so we joined those astronauts on board to make a crew of 7 for the mission. So you could see the launch was from Cape Canaveral, Florida, in the United States. And when you're sitting on top of the rocket, you're laying on your back. And you're laying there for about 3 hours prior to launch, as they put all of the fuel on board the rocket and go through all the checkouts of the systems on board. When they start to count down the clock from 10 seconds to liftoff, you can feel the rocket start to rumble as those engines light, but it's a very smooth acceleration off of the launch pad. So the G-forces build up through your chest. So here we're obviously at 1 G. And initially in the first 2.5 minutes, you feel 3.5 Gs as you accelerate on the first stage of the rocket. When that first stage cuts off, boom, you go to 0 G. Just for 11 seconds, you float. But you're very intense because you need that second stage to light. If it doesn't light, then you're going to abort and come back to Earth and hopefully survive, but be a very bad day. When that second stage lights, though, that kicks you back in the seat, and you really start to feel the rocket accelerate. Now 4.4 Gs through your chest. It makes it difficult to breathe. You have to focus on breathing. And now your tongue also weighs 4.5 times what it weighs on Earth. And so you feel it fall in the back of your throat. It feels like you're choking a little bit, but then you realize it's just your tongue. Everything's okay. 6 minutes is now that acceleration before you get to final stage separation, and now you're safely in orbit. So that's where we left you off. Safely in orbit now. We're floating in 0 G, and we have 29 hours while we rendezvous with the International Space Station.
Okay. Of course, with our pale blue dot underneath.
U6 on the big loop, contact and soft capture complete. Attenuation in progress.
Here we come through. First one through the hatch is going to be Nicole Mann, commander of Dragon. Next one through the hatch is Josh Cassada, the pilot of Dragon. Koichi Wakata of JAXA coming through the hatch. And last but not least, Anna Kikana of Roscosmos just entered the International Space Station.
Okay, so we were finally on board. International Space Station is a floating laboratory in microgravity. So our primary objective is science. Science that you can do in space you simply cannot conduct on Earth. A lot of science is on our own bodies. Here you can see I'm riding a bike, but notice there's no seat because there's no gravity, so I don't need it. but we're looking at how the cardiovascular system changes. Here, Koichi is looking at cognitive changes while living and operating in space. And of course, a lot of science on radiation and how to protect our human bodies. We grew plants in space. These plants were exciting because not only did we grow them, but we then harvested the seeds. The next experiment will fly up seeds from Earth, the seeds from space, and we'll look at the epigenetic changes of the plants to see how they modified from being in space. There's technology development. These are little flying robots called Astrobee. They navigate off of each other. They can navigate in the module. And the future of exploration will be humans and robots working together in space. We're also looking at sustained human presence on the lunar surface, on the moon, and eventually exploration to Mars, so we need to supplement our diet. This is different types of yeast and yogurt that we were experimenting with in space to see what best we can use to modify our diets. We also grew tomatoes in space, which was incredible, not only because they give good nutrition for these longer missions, but when you pull down the billows, you can smell the leaves and the tomatoes. And that is an incredible smell because you've been in space for a long time without these beautiful smells from planet Earth. So not only is it nutrition, but it's good for the psychological mind. This is one of my favorites, the biofabrication facility. We are 3D printing human cells in space. This is possible in printing the cells in a higher quality than you can on Earth. Because there's no gravity, we don't have a density gradient or thermal gradient. In fact, this past summer, we printed a human meniscus, so a meniscus in your knee. We're also looking at printing patches for a heart and eventually organs. We did 5 spacewalks on board. This is the Canada robotic arm. It's got a shoulder attached to station and the elbows in space. You can see the wrists swinging around. We use this to capture visiting vehicles, also to put an astronaut on board to fly them around the space station. The first 3 spacewalks were by Josh and Frank. So you can see them. They're coming out of the airlock into the vacuum of space. And their mission was to install new solar arrays on the space station. So Josh is here on the end of the robotic arm. Koichi and I are inside. You can see I'm flying him around on the arm. And the solar array weighs 780 pounds on Earth. In space, of course, it weighs nothing, but it still has a lot of mass. And so it's a very precise operation to fly him around because anytime you're moving, you pick up a lot of momentum. They attached the solar array and then rolled it out. You can see the new array is much smaller than the legacy array in the background, yet it provides 30% more power to the space station. So that was a successful spacewalks, and now it was time for Koichi and I to go out the door in our spacesuits.
Koichi, you are go to egress the airlock. Once you've egressed, turn on your HECA.
Here's Koichi coming out. And next you can see I'm coming out of the airlock. There's my feet, but please notice all the different cables and everything floating around. They're very challenging to keep track of. Everything needs to be tethered down to the airlock, also to the space station. Here I am translating, so climbing hand over hand. I have this large bag off my left side, and even though there's no weight, you can see there's a lot of mass. Each time I move, it moves around a bit. So you're very, very slow and methodical in your movements. Koichi and I were building support structures for the new solar arrays that would fly up. And so we worked together with a huge team on the ground in order to do that. We had some mechanical interference with the solar support structure. And so here I am in front of the legacy array. You can see I'm connected into an APFR that holds my feet so that I can be hands-free but still be safe. Worked with a huge team on the ground to overcome some of these challenges with the mechanical interference.
I'll have PGT settings for you next. Let me know when you're ready.
Needle goes, got stuck and doesn't escape. Oh, now it's in.
Okay.
Oh, that worked.
So it seems small, but we worked for many hours troubleshooting to get that support structure engaged, and it was a huge victory for the team, a great example of everybody on Earth and in space working together to make sure that we were successful in that mission. We also had a few problems while we were on board. Mainly one was a Soyuz leak. Soyuz is a spacecraft from Russia, and it was hit by a micrometeorite, which punctured the external cooling loop of the spacecraft. And so you can see that cooling liquid being ejected into the vacuum of space. Because of that, the spacecraft wasn't safe for a return. So we took Frank's seatliner, the American astronaut, from the Russian spacecraft and removed a bunch of cargo pallets and straps from Dragon, my spacecraft, and installed his seat. In case of emergency on station, we could strap him down and bring him home safely. There's a lot of maintenance on board the space station. Some is planned maintenance, but if the toilet breaks, like it did example here, then you are the plumber on board. You are also the electrician. You are also the computer fixer. And sometimes the maintenance, though, is to upgrade systems. So this system scrubs the atmosphere to make it clean. And I'm working with the crew on the ground. They're on the video camera, and I'm making some upgrades to this hardware. And so you can see I'm communicating with them and give them a wave as we work. Sometimes things are unplanned maintenance. This is in the airlock. Josh and I are working on our spacesuit. This little component he has is a pump that's critical to the life support of the spacesuit. And it was never intended to be working on in space. So there's a lot of little tiny fasteners and screws that try to escape and go hiding in the vacuum of space. Here, Frank is installing a glove box for work on material science. And although it's heavy, he can do that on his own because of space. So when you're living on board for almost 6 months, you need a lot of supplies. So we have clothing, food, all the science comes up in these cargo spacecraft. This is the NG-18, which is the SS Sally Ride. Again, I flew that robotic arm, but this time I flew it out to go and capture and hold on to the spacecraft. And you can see here, though, we also had one solar array that didn't come out. And so the team on the ground worked endlessly to determine how we can save the spacecraft since it doesn't have all the power that it needs from the sun. We lost some science, but they were able to preserve the mission. So another great example of how you have people on the ground working with the astronauts in space and how important it is that everybody works together to accomplish that mission. We also had a SpaceX cargo spacecraft. This is unique, higher generation. It's fully automated. So the spacecraft docks itself on board. I monitor to make sure everything's okay and I can send it away, but otherwise it docks by itself. And then we have all hands, everybody working together to get all the cargo, tons of cargo and bags off of the spacecraft. So we're busy on board. There's a lot of work, but it's also really fun. So you work out 2.5 hours. You lift weights every day. We use vacuum tubes to provide resistance. Here, the treadmill's on the wall. I wear a harness with bungees that keeps me down so that I can run. Eating in space is really fun as well. The food's pretty good. This is a cereal, and there's some dried milk, and I inject water into the bag and then squish it up. You can see the cereal, it just sticks to my spoon because of the surface tension of the liquid. When we drink, you drink out of bags, either water or coffee. You can drink through the straw. But sometimes it's more fun just to squirt the water into the air, and then you can just eat the water right out of the air. You do need to be careful, though, because if you open a bag, you'll see things will just start to fly away. So if you open a bag of chips, they would go everywhere. Fortunately, we normally eat together as a crew, so you can kind of help your friend capture all the food and make sure that you get the food into your mouth instead of floating away. This is a tortilla. We put a lot of food on tortillas because everything just sticks to them, and you can put it on there. It's very, very delicious. I made a charcuterie board in space with honey. I tried to get everything to stick down, but they still tried to float away. So though we work hard, it's enjoyable to come together with our crewmates and have some fun. and relax. And so we were up there, of course, for the holidays. I get a lot of questions about sleeping in space. So there's a bedroom on the left, the right, the bottom, and overhead. I slept overhead. Your room is the size of a telephone booth, and you just float inside. That blue is my sleeping bag. It's bungeed to the wall, and I just put one bungee around my waist to keep me from floating around, and it's very comfortable. Physics in space is very cool. This is just water on my hands, and it looks like a slime or a goo, but it's just regular water. It feels like my hand is in a bucket of water, very wet, but you can see it's just this very thin film of water. So we squirted a huge ball of water and put some food coloring in to see what would happen. And then we put in an Alka-Seltzer, the medicine that makes bubbles, to see the bubbles kind of grow and pop, and you could see some water getting ejected. And then I thought it'd be fun to smash my face into the ball of water, and you can see the water collects just like that thin film that we talked about before. But I forgot about all the bubbles in there, and the bubbles went right up my nose, and it was not very comfortable. Conservation of angular momentum. This is fun to experiment with in space. And you can see here that this is with Koichi. He's barely spinning. I am spinning very fast. His mass is much more than mine. You can see when I let go, though, I will continue to spin until I hit something or stop. And you can still get very dizzy while you're in space from spinning so much. This is conservation of linear momentum. This is a big jug of water. You can see has much more mass than I do. And Josh hooks his feet here and then throws the jug of water at me. It was very powerful. Just like an ice skater, you can demonstrate. I almost slow down when I put my arms out, and as soon as my arms come back, I just start spinning very quickly again. We joked that you could get caught in the middle of a module if you had nothing to hold on to. You could just be stuck there, which we didn't really do. We were just joking, but you could get stuck. Koichi loves baseball, and in space you can play by yourself. So he could be the pitcher. And if you float very fast, now you can hit the ball. And if you're very fast, you could even catch it. So Koichi did a great job. This took us a few times. So we had a lot of fun just living in micro G and enjoying our time on board the space station. The cupola is a module that has 7 windows on the belly of the space station, and it faces planet Earth. This is used for Earth observation, photographs of volcanoes, erosion, weather. It's also a beautiful place just to look at our planet. So here I'm inside the space station, and I'm going to float down with you so that we can look out to see planet Earth. It's an incredible view, and during the day, the planet is very bright, and so when you look into space, you can't see any stars. But it is very black, the most black that I've ever seen it, and empty. But it's incredible to look and see our planet, the blues and the whites of the clouds and the greens of all the different lands. It makes it seem very alive and very powerful, our planet. At night, you can see the stars, and when the sun comes up, you can see that horizon, the atmosphere, and all the different colors as it grows. You will pass over lands. This is Africa, beautiful reds of the desert, in a matter of minutes, cross continents. So it also makes the world seem very, very small. At night, you can pick up the stars. You can see stars there, and there's still a thin atmosphere that you can see. And it's incredible because that little atmosphere there is the only thing keeping all humans, all of us, all humans on Earth alive from the vacuum of space. So it makes you at the same time feel very fragile. Maybe you have seen the Northern Lights here from Estonia. We had a beautiful view of the Northern Lights from the space station. This is time lapse. All the colors and the greens and the purples are jumping, and they're very alive in space.
There we go, inside Node 2, looking at the hatchway. We can see all 4 of our crew members actually suited up and ready to go.
All hooks open.
All hooks open, depart burn 1.
Duke and Crew 5, magnificent sunset departure. You guys look great. Great job up here. We're gonna miss you. Godspeed.
Obviously, that beautiful bright light in the middle, that's Crew Dragon Endurance coming home after 157 days in space.
Main chute descent rate nominal.
And as you just saw, splashdown of Crew 5.
Check Dragon splashdown. Names have been released.
Dragon, brace for capsule lift.
And there it is, side hatch open.
Dragon Endurance, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
So we are now back on Earth, my crew, but the next crew, Crew 7, is in space now, and we also have 2 Soyuz on board. In fact, tomorrow a Soyuz will undock and bring that original crew with Sergei and Dima and Frank Rubio back to Kazakhstan, where they'll land. And we will continue. We've had people living on board the space station for over 23 years together. And it really is an international space station. We work with the United States, Canada, Europe, of course, Japan, and Russia are all partners on the International Space Station. It is a great example of how humans around the world can work together despite all of our differences and all of our backgrounds. Uniting towards a common goal, we can accomplish some amazing things, not just in space, but also back here on planet Earth. So I don't know what exactly will be next for me or my next opportunity to go to space, hopefully soon, either back to the International Space Station, or now there is a program called Artemis where we are sending astronauts back to the moon. And so potentially I'll have an opportunity to venture to the moon. And with that, I think I would love, hopefully you have some questions and we can talk about those. Please.
How would you compare the G-forces of the launch to an F-18?
Very different. So on launch, we talked about the G's coming straight through your chest. Mm-hmm. When you're flying in a jet, the G's come down through your head as you're turning in a circle, pulling G's. And so the main difference when the G's are coming down through your head is you have to do a maneuver called the Hick maneuver to work and tighten your muscles to keep the blood in your brain. If you don't, the blood will come out of your brain and you'll pass out. So you don't have that same concern as you're on launch because it's coming through your chest. The other difference is I pulled 9 Gs in a jet. It was in an F-16 actually, but only for a few seconds because you don't have the power to sustain those Gs. Whereas on launch, we talked about that 4.5 Gs for 6 minutes. That's a lot. So they're very different types of G-forces, but still amazing to feel.
Thanks. That's very impressive. 9G, damn. Anyone else?
How would you compare the launch to the landing?
Yes, the launch, as I mentioned, quite smooth, liftoff. Landing, 2 maybe different phases. When you're coming back to the planet, our airspeed reaches Mach 25, so 25 times the speed of sound. And when you slam into the atmosphere, you start to decelerate. So it's again the same type of 4.5 Gs you have through your chest as you're slowing down. But you saw in the video, we are really a ball of fire coming back through the atmosphere. We have a heat shield that's protecting us, but when you look out the window, you can see the reds and the yellows and sparks and everything flying through. As you come down through the atmosphere, though, our first parachutes deploy, drogues, and that's a really big kind of jolting shake as you decelerate more. And then the main chutes come out. You saw the big chutes in that video. You slow down even more. So when we hit the surface of the water, it's not very dramatic. You can feel it like a big splash, but not like a car crash. So not as dramatic as like a Soyuz landing. Oh, I see a question over there on to the left side.
So I have a very simple question, something that just popped into my mind. Why do you print human cells?
Oh, great question. Okay, so on Earth, if you tried to print those cells in such a manner, they would just be a blob. Or you could use some type of a chemical or some type of mechanical structure to reinforce the cells, but then it would not be as high quality, and you would essentially contaminate the cells in that manner. So in space, because we don't have the gradients, we can print the cells. Primary purpose eventually will be to potentially print full human organs. Before that, small components like the meniscus or part of a heart. So if you have a heart attack, then that muscle part of your heart is damaged and will not transmit electrical signals. So we think we can print a patch, and it could be your cells in space, so your body won't reject them. Print a patch, and that can then repair your heart to have better functionality. So that's kind of the stepping stones of what we'll see happening in space. The space station is this laboratory, and so it's a proof of concept that we could actually do this. I think in the future, you'll see smaller space stations from maybe different countries or different commercial industry that will have these laboratories in space that will be able to do such type of medicine at a fraction of the cost.
Thank you.
Yes.
How did it feel to get used to Earth's gravity again?
It was horrible.
Oh, okay.
Going to space was fine. You're floating in 0G. Your back hurts just a little bit for a few days because you grow. Some people grow up to 2 inches. I only grew a ½ inch, unfortunately. But when you come back to Earth, you shrink back down again. So some people have back, neck doesn't feel good when you're shrinking back down. Now, I showed you we work out a lot in space, so you're very strong. Your muscles are strong when you land, but the little muscles, like in your neck, in your back, they have been asleep for 6 months. So those are what stabilize you. And your vestibular system has not been working for 6 months. And so you have no sense of up-down. It's not like the room is spinning, but if you stood up, you'll just fall over. You can't tell up and down. After about 3 hours, you can walk, but you're very wobbly. And then it took about 30 days to get my agility back, where I could run and stop and go around a cone. Before then, I would tell my feet to do something, but the neuromuscular connection was broken. So it's like recovering from like an injury. And you're also, the first few weeks, you're very tired because you have to carry your head around all day, and you're not used to doing that. And then sleeping is not, even the softest pillow is pushing on your face. It's not very comfortable. In space, you just sleep like this and float, and it's the most comfortable thing. And your neck you never have to turn over. Your arms never fall asleep. It's very comfortable. So it takes some time to get used to gravity back on Earth.
Thank you.
I was wondering, how safe is a spacewalk?
Good question. We have not lost anybody on a spacewalk, fortunately, but there's a lot of safety measures that go into place preparing for a spacewalk. So about 2 weeks prior, you're setting up all of your equipment that you bring outside. You're also running all the tests on your spacesuit, and teams on the ground are there supporting all this. All the data from the spacesuit is sent real time, also back to the ground, so they monitor everything that happens. And we have emergency procedures if something does go wrong to come back in. About 10 years ago, we had a problem with a water leak in the spacesuit. So you wear a suit that has little tubes that go all around your body, and you can adjust the temperature of the water. That helps keep your body cool. And there was a leak in the system that Luca Parmitano, who is an Italian astronaut, had this leak. And you saw how that water stuck to my face and to my hands? That happened to him, but he's in the spacesuit. So the water got on his face and on his eyebrows. And at the time, he had a little mustache, and the water's attracted to that. So it covered his eyes and towards his mouth. And so he was unable to see after some time. You can shake your head, the water's not going to come off. And that's concern as it was coming to his mouth, you could drown in maybe a quarter cup of water. So it was an emergency procedure. He worked with his other crew member to get back inside the door and repressurize. So they stopped the spacewalk early. But that's the last kind of major problem that we had with the suits.
How long does it take to, to train to tolerate the 9 to 10 Gs?
So the Gs in a fighter jet, you start off flying small trainer jets. You'll maybe pull up to 3 Gs, so you get used to it. You also wear a G suit, which compresses your legs, and that provides about 1 G of protection. There's also a training device called a centrifuge. Maybe you have heard of centrifuge before. That spins you around. And so you can experience Gs and practice doing that hick maneuver where you tighten all of your core muscles to keep the blood into your head. In the centrifuge, if you pass out, you'll be okay. But obviously, if you're flying a jet and pass out, then that would not be good. So you learn what your indications are. As you get close to G-lock is what it's called when you pass out, you will start to lose color vision, and you'll also, then the sides of your vision will start to come into collapse like a soda straw. If that happens, you need to release the G, the pull, because if that goes 0 and you pass out, then you will most likely crash. So it's a slow kind of training over many years before you fly the big fighters where you can pull that many Gs.
What is the biggest discovery that you made or your team made living on and working on space?
The biggest discovery, yes. I think the 3D printing of human cells was a great milestone that we created. A lot of the studies, though, are long-term studies. So that cardio breath study where I was riding the bike and had everything hooked up to me, that will be over the course of maybe 5 years. They'll look at 20 astronauts or so and gather that data. And so sometimes we have to wait many years to see those types of results. The technology, the little flying Astrobees robots, that technology is very interesting. As I'm sure you're experienced with robotics and artificial intelligence, this is the future of some technology. And so it was interesting to see even the 6 months on board, those little flying robots, how much they learned and how much they could navigate. They each had their own personality, which I think is odd. There was Queen Bee was one. She was not very nice. And then there was Bumblebee, and he was very compliant, and he was great. He would go where he wanted to. Queen Bee would often leave the module, and so you'd be in the lab doing something else, and here would come Queen Bee floating up. Like, you're not supposed to be here. You take her back to her docking station. So it was very interesting.
You know how you leave stuff floating in space, right? Yeah. How long did it get? How long did it get you to get used to that stuff drops back on Earth?
Oh, pretty quickly actually. Your brain remembers, so I'd never, like let go of something and let it drop. But you're surprised how heavy everything is. So I always had an iPad, which you Velcro to your leg, and everything's on the iPad, your schedule for the day, all your procedures. And I remember getting back to Earth, and then somebody handing me an iPad, and oh my gosh, why is it so heavy? Because I'd been working with the iPad, and it just weighs nothing. It took probably more time in space to remember that if I can't set something down, it won't stay there, right? So I would set, I'd have some food or a tool, and you try to set it down, and because you hit it off of something, it'll just float up. So everything has to be tethered, or we use a lot of Velcro, or tape that you turn inside out, then you can stick stuff to the tape. But that was very frustrating in the beginning because you open a bag and the tools would just fly everywhere. And you'll be amazed. Even a large camera, that if I'm using the camera, sometimes you just set it in space and do something and then you can grab it again. But sometimes you forget or you accidentally bump it and it will go floating away and you'll lose it for maybe 2 days. Because though of the circulation, you know it's going to end up at the inlet air circulation in the airlock usually, and people will help you look to find it. But amazing how you could lose something so large.
What do you think about the Mars mission and how realistic is it?
I think it's realistic, yeah. I think it's not anytime soon. And first, we need to look at the moon. So the moon is going to be a stepping stone to eventually explore to Mars. We've operated in low Earth orbit, where the International Space Station is now for over 20 years, where we have almost continuous communication with the ground. They can help out in any problems. They have a lot of commanding and control the systems on board the space station. If something went wrong, if I got sick or space station got hit by something, I could be back on Earth in just 2 hours. Now, if I'm at the moon, I'm at least 4 days away. Not going to have continuous coverage from the ground. So we need to learn as humans how to live and operate autonomously without constant support from the ground. Also, how to protect ourselves from radiation. And we need to determine how to use some of the resources on the moon in order to develop fuel that we can take to Mars. It would be extremely costly to try to launch all that from planet Earth. So Artemis 2 will fly around the moon next year, and the astronauts on board will test out the life support systems of the new spacecraft Orion. And then future missions will land on the surface of the moon and then eventually develop the technology and the science to get us all the way to Mars. So I think maybe this exploration will be in your time frame when you're a couple, maybe 20 years older or so and have experience. So if any of you are interested in traveling to Mars or being a scientist or being an engineer, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. There already is a lot of opportunity for exploration in low Earth orbit, the moon, and eventually Mars. You're seeing the world come together in this effort also. We have the Artemis Accords, which is already 25 countries around the world have signed on board, and it's for it's the agreement to explore the moon and space peacefully and to also share that information with everybody so that everybody can benefit from that data. And so I do think it has a great potential to unite the world as a human race in order to explore, not just have this country, this country, this country, right? It's everybody. We're going to need everybody together because everybody has different experiences, different perspectives, and we can all work together and achieve so much more.
I was wondering, how do you tell time in space, or is there a time difference?
Yes, so we operate off of GMT, so Zulu time, and you just have, you have a regular watch and an iPad, so we operate on a normal 24-hour cycle. And you try to, we have actually a very strict schedule on board, usually working from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. And then outside of that, you have your breakfast and your dinner and your sleep. But you try to stay on a regular cycle, just like we do on Earth. It helps to keep you sharp and efficient at doing your work.
How did you develop the wish to become an astronaut?
That wish didn't develop for me until a little bit later on life. So when I was your age in high school, I did not aspire to be an astronaut. And really because I had never met an astronaut before and I didn't know exactly what they did, it seemed like a far off dream that other people did. And so I wanted to serve in the military. And so I went into the military service, into the Marine Corps, and flew fighter jets in the Marine Corps. During that time, I was looking at other opportunities. I was also an engineer. I studied mechanical engineering in school. And so I wanted to combine kind of engineering and being a fighter pilot together. And so I became a test pilot. And then during that time, NASA opened up the applications to become an astronaut. So during my time flying in the Marine Corps, I looked online and started Googling astronauts, and I found there were 2 astronauts that were Marines in the astronaut corps. And they both flew F-18s, and they had engineering degrees just like me. And so it was really looking at that I realized, oh, well, if they did it, then I can certainly do that. And this is something that is an opportunity and is possible for me. So hopefully you all realize that younger in life, that there are many opportunities out there and many examples of amazing things that are opportunities for you to take.
What did you do in your free time in space? Like, what would you usually do?
Free time, usually we got one day a week off, and you have a couple hours in the evening. And so, of course, I have my husband and I have my son. He's 11. So it was fun to call home to talk to them, or to call and talk to my parents. You also, it's important that you take care of your mind just like you do your body. And so if you like to read or listen to music or watch a movie, it's important that you do that in your time off. Same thing when you're living in space. But my favorite thing to do was to look out of the cupola windows at the planet. Just an absolutely incredible view. And unfortunately, the photographs and the video can't capture how vibrant the colors are and how dynamic they change when you're watching the planet fly by. It was pretty amazing.
My question's a bit different. Did you see any extraterrestrials or any UFOs while you were in space?
I looked. I really did. I looked. Sometimes I would sit in the cupola at night and turn off all the lights inside, and so you can see the planet and you can see more stars than ever you can imagine. You can't even find an area of the sky that doesn't have a star. And I would think, okay, anybody wants to come visit me, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm right here. But nobody came to visit me, unfortunately. So. Yes, specifically during my increment, we did not, but there is a lot of investigation for growing cancer cells in space and testing pharmaceuticals. Also muscular dystrophy has been investigated quite a bit recently. Because of the way that those protein structures grow, again, a higher quality in space that you can't duplicate here on Earth. So now we can test the pharmaceuticals against these diseases. And once we can determine the proper pharmaceutical, that can then be recreated on Earth, right? But that investigation, a lot of it is done in space.
I wanted to ask, since you need to have so many different skills and to train so long to go into space, how much do astronauts actually get paid, or is it like for the good of humankind, so you don't really get paid that much?
Right, we are government employees, so we get paid not very much. I get paid the same that I do in my military service. So being a Marine, flying jets, I became an astronaut, but unfortunately no pay raise. So.
Wait, I forgot my question.
Did the radiation of space bother you when you were sleeping?
You can see sometimes when your eyes are closed that you can see sometimes there will be a solar, based on the solar weather, some type of event, and you could see some flashes through your eyelids. Not very often though. We wear sensors that keep track of all the radiation exposure that we have, and then that's all tracked on the ground. Also on a spacewalk, obviously you'll have more exposure to radiation. And so I have not felt, anything, and we have not seen anything in the astronaut corps where there's a higher rates of problems because of that radiation exposure. But when we go to the moon, certainly, and to Mars, radiation is one of our main concerns. And how can we protect the astronauts against the radiation and do so in a manner that's sustainable, but also can't be, very heavy. Like it'd be great if you could use water, right, or lead and shield, the astronauts, but that's just not feasible in space. So we're coming up with new ways in order to do that. So if you have any ideas, of course, we need your help in doing that. Yes.
You have seen our Earth. Who believes that the Earth is flat? Say it. No, it's round.
Earth is definitely round. I've seen it. I can tell you, it's round.
Right. So I remembered my question. What is something that you did not expect to happen or see when you first went into space?
That's a good one. We're trained very well for kind of all the operations to happen in space. And we also train a lot on how to live and work together in a group in a very confined environment. And so that is what we call expeditionary behavior. And that is leadership, but it's also followership. And that is team care, but it's also self-care, reflecting on yourself. And I knew this would be important, but I didn't realize just how important it would be. You have 7 people living in a very confined area, very high work tempo, very stressful environment. Everybody has different backgrounds, different cultures, different ideas, different ways of dealing with things. It was so important that we worked well together as a team. And we did that very early on. In the first 2 weeks, every evening we would get together and say, okay, how did today go? How did work go? How did our interactions go? And if there was something small, maybe that somebody was doing that wasn't right or that you didn't appreciate, it was very easy to bring that up before it became kind of a big deal. And so I was surprised on how important that was, that human interaction is the most important in my mind, because if you can't work well together, you're not going to be very efficient in getting your job done. If you don't have good trust amongst each other, then you will not be able to accomplish the mission. So I was surprised by that.
And I have another one. What kind of education do you need to become an astronaut?
So to become a U.S. astronaut, you need to have a master's degree in a hard science. So that needs to be, engineering, any type of engineering, medicine, any scientific kind of investigation, marine biologist, electrical engineer, any of those types of degrees. So normally we select a class every 4 years, and that changes. But I also think that the times are changing, right? This low Earth orbit that I talked about is now really opening up to commercial industry and to other countries that don't have a space program. And so Axiom is a company in the United States that rents spacecraft from SpaceX and has flown astronauts to the space station. And these astronauts sometimes are space tourists, or sometimes they're astronauts from another country that doesn't have its own space program. So these missions right now are short missions, maybe 10 days, but I think you'll see the increased population in low Earth orbit. And I think that is, it's a great thing for our world. So you'll see more scientists in space, but maybe you'll also see an artist and a poet and somebody that can see that view of our planet from space and describe that to you in a better way than I can, in a much more articulate way, maybe through poetry or through art. And I think that will be important to try to give that perspective to the rest of the world. So I think it will be very common in your lifetime to take a trip to low Earth orbit.
Have you ever visited some other planets, like physically?
No, so we've been to the moon, but not since the early 70s. And space station is really the only, we have a space station. China has a space station right now. And those are the only 2 in space operating. And so when we go back to the moon next year, we'll just go around. But then in a couple years to follow that, hopefully land. That'll be our next investigation. We've sent, obviously, rovers. We have rovers on Mars. And we also sent recently a mission to Bennu, which is an asteroid. It's called OSIRIS-REx. And in fact, it launched many years ago, maybe 7 years ago, collected a sample from this asteroid and just returned to Earth, to the United States, a couple days ago. And so this sample return potentially has some information that can increase our knowledge on the understanding of where the universe, the origins of the universe. So that's very exciting. So even though humans have not been on another heavenly body other than the moon, we now have a sample that we'll be able to investigate.
I have a very silly question. How do the toilets work in space?
It's a very common question, yes. And so it's actually quite simple to urinate in space. You have a tube that has a little bit of a vacuum in it and a funnel. And so you just, for men, very easy just to aim into the funnel. And for women, you can just put the funnel up close to you. And because of that suction, all the liquid will go into the funnel. To go to number 2, to defecate, is a little more complicated. You have a cylinder like that with a small opening. And inside that opening is a bag. The bag has elastic to hold it, holes in the bottom, and again, some suction coming through. And so you must align yourself over that bag and make sure that everything goes into the hole. If it touches your body or the metal side, it will kind of grow like a ball and make a mess. And so that suction helps everything going. But you always wear gloves, and you always look around to make sure nothing escaped after you go to the bathroom. That's very important. And then really the bag gets, you fold it up and it goes into the bottom of this container called a keteo, and then you just put another bag in. When it's full, you put the lid on, tighten it down, and then you stow it in what's called a PMM, which is a huge closet, until one of the cargo vehicles, the Cygnus vehicle that I told you about, NG-18, for example, that brings up all the cargo. But then after all the cargo's out, we fill it with all of our trash, clothes, food packaging, leftover, used science equipment, and those keteos all get stuffed inside of that, and it burns up in the atmosphere on reentry. So that doesn't bring anything home. The other cargo spacecraft, Dragon, brings all the cargo back home, and so all the science, like the meniscus that they grew in space, will come back on that spacecraft and land, and they can recover, but none of the trash.
What do you think of the Voyager spacecrafts?
Of the Voyager spacecrafts on the moon, you mean?
No.
Or which ones?
The Voyager 1 and 2.
Voyager 1 and 2? Yeah. I mean, I think any type of, I focus on the human exploration component, but I think any exploration that we have is important. And it's good that we, work with our international partners to go and explore and really learn as much as we can. More data that we can gather is certainly better.
I've also managed to figure out something maybe for the radiation.
Oh, you have an idea? Yes.
Graphite.
Graphite, okay. Yes?
They use it in nuclear reactors, so.
Okay. I think it's a good idea. We should look into that. Yes. You guys should have sat next to each other.
I would like to know, what is your opinion on that there is life in space somewhere?
To be honest, I don't know. I wish I did. Like I said, I didn't see anything while I was up in space or have any type of experiences. But I think in my mind, the concept that we're the only living thing in the entire universe seems crazy to me, right? But the concept also that there's another planet out there with an intelligent life form that hopefully we could communicate with someday seems crazy to me also. And so I think that's why part of it's so exciting, our exploration in space, to maybe answer some of those questions, also to answer some of the questions of how planet Earth was formed. You know, was there life on Mars at some point? If so, what happened to that planet? Could that happen to our planet? How are we affecting our planet? What do we need to do to take care of our atmosphere and our planet, especially since it's the only one that we have? So a lot of that, not only answering questions, but developing all the science that we talked about, the radiation protection to explore, but also the benefits of the pharmaceuticals and all the other science we're doing to benefit humans back on Earth. It makes me very excited for the future of human space flight, hopefully to find some more answers to these awesome questions. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful being here and sharing time with you. And fortunately, this afternoon, I get to have a tour of your beautiful island. And so thank you for sharing all the history of the island with me.
So, thank you very much. And thank you all very much for all these questions. But now you should go.
Before we go, we have a little gift for you. It's from our student company and from our school, from visiting us.
Thank you.
It's a little candle with lavender scent.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming here.
I brought the patches, the Crew 5 patch with our names, that dragon that we flew. And then on board, we were Expedition 68 with all of our international crew on board.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.